All right, we had to get creative tonight since Facebook no longer supports a Chromebook, and that's what we've been working this off of all this time. So I'm going to be adjusting and working off of the phone tonight. So quick audible. Thanks for the patience. All right, perfect. All right, I'm going to do my best to track the comments on here, actually. I have my phone propped on my laptop, so I'll be able to pull it up on my laptop here, and we'll be able to read your questions off there. Just give me 30 seconds, and we'll be good to go. Look at that. Let's see if we can get to the comments. All right. There we go. Setting it up the best I can. All right, perfect. All right, so we'll go ahead and start off. We got a good crowd early tonight. All right, awesome. All right, so we'll start off with the COVID numbers tonight, and it's been really good news. Really, for the past 2 weeks, we are really we've been running about actually an average of less than a case a day over the past week since our Facebook Live last week. So we had one new case today. We're at 215 total cases since this thing began. Kind of put that in perspective for you. You know, when we were in the peak of this, we were getting sometimes 7, 8, 9. I believe the one day we had just short of a dozen new cases a day, right? Getting those in a single day. Since May 1st, right? So almost 2 weeks, we have had less than 20 new cases. So everybody in this community is doing an outstanding job, clearly, with social distancing, with following the safe practices and protocols and suggestions and recommendations that are out there, because you don't drop the numbers from where we were to a case a day in a town of 24,000 people without a lot of effort from everybody. So that's a great job, and really appreciate that. That makes public safety a lot easier to stay on top of here. So I'm sure everybody saw a lot of executive orders that have jumped out over the past couple of days. EO 143, which has to do with opening up the beaches, opening up bathrooms, good stuff like that. Then we have 142, which allows us to have. I can see my camera getting wonky, going in and out of focus. Makes my nose look better. So that'll allow people to have in-car gatherings now. So now they're allowing these in-car gatherings. A couple of rules that go along with that. One of the rules is have to have the windows up, sunroof closed, unless you are more than 6 feet apart from other cars. If you have to stay in the car that you arrived in. So if you're going somewhere where there's 50 cars gathering up, you can't be hopping from car to car. And there's a couple other rules. We'll post a link to it so you can take a look at it. I know that's going to bring lots of questions up as far as what happens. Does that apply to to graduations and things like that? I know that I think all of you have been experiencing this, certainly along with us. It seems like almost every 48 hours now we get a different interpretation of something. So I'm not sure where that's gonna head, obviously, but I'm sure we'll see more developing on these things opening up and having more flexibility in how events are held going forward. So all positive news, and I'm sure all tied to the fact that we're consistently driving those numbers down. All right. We'll go over to the officers, how we're doing internally here. We still have 2 officers, the same ones we talked about last week, out on quarantine. One of them because of a physical confrontation with someone here on a call, and another officer for a family member, immediate family member, with a positive result. Both those officers are doing fine. They're asymptomatic. Neither of them has tested positive or anything like that. So we're just waiting out the quarantine period here, playing it safe, and otherwise we've got everybody else healthy and at work. There's been some questions out there. I've seen it in discussions online, so I'm going to hit a couple of issues. Here. Questions about when we're going back to normal, quote unquote. When are we, going to be going to all first aid calls? When are we going to go back to handling every single call in person? The answer is not yet. We've done a ton of work as a community to drive these numbers down, and I can think of nothing worse on our end as a police department than to use a football metaphor here, than spiking the ball on the 1 yard line because we think we're over the finish line here and we're done. So we're going to stay conservative with how we dial things back. I will tell you, when people talk about some agencies around the state and when are they going back to normal staffing levels, because a lot of agencies change their shift structure. We move things around here to create essentially a reserve force that when we were afraid of a large amount of attrition prior to really knowing how big this was going to get and having all the PPE involved, we had made some changes. We resumed our regular schedule, full staffing, everything back on May 3rd. So, we made the comment at the time that we feel as an agency, at least in the law enforcement community, we led into this mess and we're going to lead out of this mess. So we returned back to our full staffing back on May 3rd. And we did it because we really work to be data driven here. So, the numbers, the call volume, the calls for service, everything indicated that, as far as a police workload, things were getting back to normal, and in some cases busier than normal, like we've talked about with domestic violence and some other issues. So, we went back to our full staffing, and we've been running that for almost 2 weeks now. But for first aid calls, again, if it's cardiac arrest, respiratory arrest, an unresponsive person, if it's a call where we have to take life-saving measures, we're going to go ahead and go to that call. But if it's a call that's a general weakness, stomach pain, any of these, we get a litany of different first aid calls in this town. We're not going to go to those as long as first aid, EMS, is on their way to the call, and there's no reason for us to have to intervene. And again, in the beginning when we did that, we go all the way back to March when we started that, first week of March. That was for two reasons. One was to limit the exposure to the officers, because again, we didn't know a whole lot about this then, right? So we were worried about attrition of the workforce. But the second part of that was to protect the public, because we know the officers can be asymptomatic carriers. They're obviously on numerous calls for service, and we don't want to be bringing anything into your house. You're working hard to stay at home. You're wearing masks. You're washing your hands. You don't need a parade of girls and guys in French blue walking into your house if it's not necessary. So that's the reason that we're still not going back on those basic first aid calls. And it's the same reason that we're going to continue to handle non-emergency calls over the phone when we can. If we don't have to process evidence, if there's no reason for us to do an on-scene investigation, well, we're not going to come introduce ourselves into your home or have to worry about social distancing issues. We're going to continue to handle them over the phone. So, we're going to do that until we're very comfortable that we're on the right side of this and don't have to worry about another spike here. So, I just wanted to address that because it keeps coming up. I'd like to talk about. It's Police Week this week. Tomorrow is a Peace Officer Memorial Day. Typically, we would have our Team Barnegat riders doing the ride all the way down to Washington D.C. For the candlelight vigil and all the remembrance activities that go on down at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. And obviously, we can't do that this year with COVID going on. But we certainly want to make sure we don't forget all the officers from New Jersey over the years who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service of their communities, and certainly not the 77 line of duty deaths that we've had so far this year in 2020. So, all right, that's most of the update information there. Last thing before we jump over to questions, because I see we already have a bunch spooling up. We'll hit a couple of issues that seem to be big issues online, and frankly, if you go on some law enforcement only pages, you'll see it discussed on there. But I want to hit it because I keep seeing it popping up here and there in discussions on a lot of the Barnegat centric pages, which means the thoughts are out there. And it has to do with the legality of these executive orders that we've been dealing with, and it has to do with constitutional rights. And I'm not going to make this a legal seminar, and I'm going to do this quickly, but I think it's important that we get two things out there, two pieces of information. I keep seeing over and over again this assertion. Bill Sergio, I just saw that pop up. Hey, Bill, hope you're doing well. We keep hearing this assertion that these executive orders aren't legal because laws have to be passed by the legislator and your elected officials. So we'll tackle that one first and very quickly. Everything that's been being done since going back into February is being done under the New Jersey Civilian Defense and Disaster Control Act, which is a law that was passed way back in the 40s and has been amended through the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And that law, which was passed by elected legislators, went through the proper legislative process. That law is the law that governs what the governor can do and the actions that can be taken during a disaster declaration. So when I see the assertion that, well, I don't have to listen to the executive order because it's not a real law, I can assure you it absolutely is a real law and it is absolutely enforceable. And again, we haven't had any problems with it here in our community, which doesn't surprise me at all. And any times we had areas where executive orders weren't being followed, it wasn't for a blatant or purposeful reason. It was people who just didn't understand how the executive order applied because it was new. And that's going back over the past couple months. So that's part one. Part two is this assertion about, hey, we don't have to follow this because we have our constitutional rights and I have a right of, freedom of movement and freedom of expression and everything that we hold dear in the Constitution. So I'm not going to take a ton of time talking about it now, but I would encourage anybody who's interested in it, go Google the case of Jacobson v. Massachusetts. Jacobson v. Massachusetts. That's a United States Supreme Court case argued a long, long time ago in 1904 and settled law since 1905, reaffirmed in 1922, and that is the case law, that is the Supreme Court decision that says that our constitutional rights, all of us, are not absolute, and we know that. You don't have the freedom to say whatever you want, wherever you want, right? The shouting fire in a crowded theater. But that your rights, your constitutional rights, people's constitutional rights, can be restricted in certain circumstances where it is reasonably necessary for the public health and welfare. If you read the Jacobson case, we think we're getting, we get upset about being told that, we can't go into a certain store or that, we can't go into a park. The Jacobson case had to do with forced vaccinations. It was during a smallpox outbreak up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So when we talk about this stuff being constitutional, under the current case law, it's constitutional. And the beauty of this wonderful system that we have here in this constitutional republic is anything that's been going on over the last several months, if people want to challenge it because they don't believe it's constitutional, there's a beautiful system in place of redress that they can file lawsuits. We saw that happen out in Wisconsin recently that went to the state Supreme Court there, and there's a whole system in place for that. So just throw that out there so people who are interested can dig into it a little bit themselves, but so that we kind of debunk these, I know it always happens, but it seems that this pandemic has brought out a ton of people from Facebook Law School and Facebook Medical School. So I just wanted to hit those two issues. That is all I have as far as an update tonight, and I'm going to do my best to not knock my phone over, not blur myself out, and juggle through some questions here. As I see, we have a bunch. All right, we can scroll. Oh, look at that. We're scrolling all the way back. All right. Nick, you are welcome. Yeah, we put a ton of time in over there on Ravenwood. Appreciate the feedback on that, and hopefully that keeps things under control, and we'll continue to keep an eye on it. Any news about fireworks? My understanding is fireworks are still on. So I'm not sure what it's going to look like because, frankly, I don't know what the executive order is going to look like 2 days from now. Never mind 2 weeks or 2 months from now. But the fireworks are on. That's my understanding from the township committee and the administrator. So the fireworks are still a go. Will beach access be limited at Barnegat Beach? So the executive orders pretty much hot off the presses here. So I'll be talking to the committee. That's ultimately up to them to decide what kind of controls that they're going to put in place there in line with the executive order. Executive order gives a ton of discretion to the municipalities, so I'm sure that the committee is going to come up with something that makes sense and works. So that'll be more to come on that. And yes, we're going to monitor it. You know, the beaches, they want you to keep social distancing, so 6 feet apart. You know, they're just looking to make sure that we can use the beaches safely. Frankly, we've been doing it here because the beach has been open from the beginning of this, and we haven't had any problems. Obviously, with the weather coming up, especially tomorrow, looking at 83 degrees. Are the courts open? Courts are being done virtually right now, David. Drive-in movies this summer. That's a good question, Nicole. I'm not sure. I know Rec usually has them scheduled up. It's a good question for recreation, and I'm sure they'll be updating that as these orders solidify and we're comfortable that that they're going to be able to be carried on. You are welcome, Angela. Thank you for the shout out. Airbnbs, Kathy, I will circle back with you on that and see where that's at. How am I doing today? I'm great, Alexander. I have the greatest job in the world. Thank you. Backlog on firearms ID permits. Sergio, no, there's a whole stack of them that just got signed today. Those will go out in the mail either tomorrow or Monday. There's just, as you can imagine, we took, you know, I didn't compare it all the way back, going back like a decade, but we took in probably the most firearms applications over the last 2 months that we've ever taken in over a 2-month period. So there's just a lot of applications in the hopper right now, but Sergeant Cassidy's moving along on those as quickly as he can. Do we know when our DMV will open? No. So on that, I mentioned week in, week out, this core stat, which is a statewide, basically like an OEM call that it's typically 700-800 law enforcement executives, command staff on that thing every day from all across the state, you know, federal, state, county, municipal. And that question is popping up on almost a daily basis. When is DMV going to open? Because we know it's a problem for residents because you buy a car through private sale and you can't register it. And law enforcement, you know, we haven't taken any delivery here, but you know, PDs are getting their new cars in, their fleet supplements for the year, and they can't register them because nothing's open. So we keep hearing that we'll hear something soon. I just don't know when soon is going to be. When will Best Buy reopen? So one of the executive orders that just got passed the last 24 hours allows all non-essential businesses to be open now, but you can't go in the store. It's just for delivery and curbside pickup. So I would imagine they'll be. Oh, there we go. Michelle's on that. Yep. Yep. Everybody's answering questions before I get to it because I haven't scrolled and seen your answer. So thanks for jumping in. Lots of questions tonight. So Debbie, a good question, and I know there was that gentleman talking about he was going to open his gym. So we talked about it earlier, that Disaster Control Act that exists, there are statutes in that that allow, that essentially lay out violations and what the penalties are for those violations. So if somebody, you know, blatantly violates an executive order, they can be arrested and they can be charged with a number of criminal offenses. They can be charged under that Disaster Control Act. It's an interesting one to Google. It's a weird statute number. It's APP period 9 : starts at 33 and then goes down through the 40s and 50s, a bunch of different chapters. But also there are laws in our regular criminal code, Title 2C, that would apply to creating a dangerous condition by violating an executive order like that during a public health emergency. So I would say it's not going to end well, is what I would say. You know, Sandy, that's a great question about if people are allowed on the high school grounds yet, and we're going to have to look for clarification. So to Sandy's point, one of the executive orders said that the schools, nobody can be on school property for any reason. Can't use the track, can't use the fields. So we're going to have to see where that plugs in with the fireworks, Sandy. It's a great question. Oh, I didn't see that, Michelle. If the governor said that, we'll say he's got 2 months to change his mind on that then. Um, right. So what we'll do is questions about it. We're going to update people on the beach access. We'll make sure we know that's a hot button issue right now. So we'll make sure that goes out through Nixle, and we'll make sure we get that out on the township. Ask them to put it out on the township website, and we'll make sure we get it out through the PD as well. Best Buy, lots of Best Buy. Drive-ins. Yeah, so the question of the fireworks, I was told they are still on, but then somebody mentioned that apparently during the governor's address today, he said no fireworks. So we'll get a confirmation on that and get squared up on it. Yes, with DMV closed, keep trying to reiterate this every week. Driver's licenses, registrations, inspection stickers, everything's bumped out 2 months. You have a 2-month extension. So if your driver's license, expires, May 31st, it's good through the end of July. All right, so everything's extended 2 months. Frank Esposito, welcome, sir. Yep, the medication drop box in the lobby is open, and we're cleaning the lobby numerous times a day, every day. Melvin, I do not believe they have secured a lifeguard for this year yet. That was last year. That was a big issue. They advertised for it, got no applications, didn't have anybody to hire, and ended up opening it without a lifeguard there. So I haven't heard anything different for this year. Brandy, you're allowed to go sit on the beach. You just have to be 6 feet away from people. And when we say that too, you should probably clarify it. If you go there with an immediate family member that you live with, clearly you don't need to be 6 feet away from them. They just mean 6 feet away from other individuals that aren't with your immediate family if you're there with immediate family members. Do I know when the casinos will be open in Atlantic City? I do not, Alexander. I know they got a couple of different plans in place there, but I don't know. I don't know when. Got to imagine the state's losing a ton of revenue not having the casinos open. So I'm sure they'll have those open as soon as they can. Man, lots of requests for drive-in movies at the docks. It would be great if they can make that work. All right, Ray, I see. Looking to see how you get on Nixle for updates. I'll put a link up when we're done here. But if you go to, if you just Google Nixle, you can sign up for free online, and then you can choose to get notifications from Barnegat Township, Ocean County. I think they allow statewide notifications on there as well. Yeah, I see the question about the movie at the docks. I don't know the answer to that. I know Recreation usually plans drive-in movies. I don't know if they are going forward with those this summer or not, so we'll find out. And no, I don't know when the movie theaters will open up. I think you can all see, stuff got ratcheted down gradually, and I'm sure it's going to get opened up gradually as we're moving along here. So at least we're pointed in the right direction. Barbara, thanks for posting that link up. Appreciate that. Are we going to run the Junior Police Academy this summer? Talked about this a couple of times. We're going to wait until it looks like the trend is there, that we're going to be allowed to have a gathering like that, and until we would be confident that it can be done safely. Still a lot of unknowns out there with this right now. If we do it, it will not be until towards the end of the summer. It won't be until August, and we'll make sure we give plenty of notice so everybody can get signed up for that. But I wouldn't be able to commit to it one way or the other right now because again, we've all seen things can change pretty quickly with this. So don't know where we're going to be then. Yep, barbershops and nail salons, just like the movie theaters, just like dining in. Not sure when they're gonna loosen things up enough to go back to that. So, like I said, if you use how things got locked down as a guide, it seemed like every week things were getting tightened up as the numbers were going up, and now it seems like things are kind of getting loosened up a little bit week by week as the numbers have flattened out and continue to go down. So I'm sure we'll continue to head in that direction. Good question about the nursing home and how many cases there. We didn't have a major problem in the nursing center in Barnegat like some towns and communities did. I can tell you, if you look at the state as a whole, better than 50%. When I ran the numbers the other day, it was 52% of all the deaths in the state of New Jersey from COVID were in long-term care facilities. 52%. So. A very large number, obviously, in the long-term care facilities. All right. Scrolling back to see how many I missed. As always, I'll go back through these after we're done, and anything I missed, we'll go ahead and try to answer. All right, I'll give you a minute to post up any other last-minute questions. Another good night, another bunch of good questions. At some point here, we're going to probably go to every other week on this as the info kind of slows up. Not quite yet because we're still getting good participation here. So as long as we're getting good attendance, good clicks, and good questions, we'll keep it weekly. But probably before too long here, we'll slide back to every other week. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure about the hair salons in the parking lots. It's interesting, Jess. I didn't know that if that's the case, that the numbers are combined for long-term care facilities. I'll actually look at that. Thank you. All right, everybody. A good night of questions here. Thank you, everybody, for the participation. Go safely enjoy what at least looks like it'll be a beautiful Friday, if not a beautiful weekend. And we'll be back with everybody again next Thursday night. Stay safe. Thank you.